And welcome to day 24 in the Atlantic hurricane season, day 42 in the Eastern Pacific. It's June the 24th, 2013 today, and we have a new tropical depression in the Eastern Pacific itself, Tropical Depression 3E, and that's expected to become a tropical storm very shortly during the next 24 hours, and perhaps a hurricane later on. We also have in the Western Pacific what's left of Tropical Depression Bebinca, which is now in over Vietnam at the moment. There isn't too much left of that storm. You can see the Pacific overview here. 95W was also with us but has been declassified earlier today. 95E is still going but has only a 20% chance of formation now in the Eastern Pacific. And of course we have Tropical Depression 3E, which is the one we'll be watching over the next few days at least, because that will probably be the biggest storm we'll have for a little while yet. Looking at the Atlantic Ocean, you can see here it's still very quiet here at the moment. After Barry, not much going on at all, even in terms of cloud cover, not much here in terms of tropical waves or anything of that nature forming in the Atlantic at the moment. The Indian Ocean, you can see here, fairly quiet across most of the ocean except for the Bay of Bengal, where we have some pretty typical tropical weather going on in the Bay of Bengal, not likely to develop into any tropical systems over the next few days at least. So let's take a look at the current sea surface temperatures off the Eastern Pacific. The water's there around 30 degrees, especially near the Mexican coastlines. So that's obviously going to be very favourable conditions for the new tropical depression. Water's off the Gulf Coast, the northern Gulf Coast is fairly warm as well, 30 degrees or more, and around the Philippines in particular, looking at warm waters here, which may obviously be conducive to tropical cyclone development should any tropical cyclones find themselves there. So let's take a look at Tropical Depression Bebinca. Fabian was the Philippine name, still with winds of 25 miles per hour and a pressure of 1000 millibars, current position 20.6 north, 106.2 east, and is expected to remain almost stationary and perhaps moving very slightly towards the north-northwest over the next 2 days or so, and is likely to degenerate into a remnant low. As far as the Joint Typhoon Warning Centre is concerned, it already is. The GMA, I believe, is still issuing advisories on the system at the moment as a tropical depression, Bebinca there. And we also have Tropical Depression 3, of course, in the Eastern Pacific. You can see the track map now, expected to become a tropical storm very soon, and then is expected to move towards the sort of like a west-northwesterly direction generally as a tropical storm, before perhaps peaking as a Category 1 hurricane in around 2 days' time, but is not likely to affect land. It's fairly a fair distance away from the Mexican coastline, and is only going to get further away from the Mexican coastline over the next few days, so it probably won't be too problematic there for the Mexican coast. Current winds at 35 miles per hour, pressure is 1005 millibars, and Invest 95E isn't expected to get much further either. Currently winds of 30 miles per hour, pressure of 1008 millibars. The models aren't developing it at all anymore, we'll go on to that one very shortly. 20% chance of development though still by the National Hurricane Centre, current position 13.5 north, 113.9 degrees west. So let's take a look at the satellite imagery then. First of all, the satellite imagery here in the Western Pacific. You can see over the past 24 hours or so the remnants of Bebinca. You can see the centre of the storm moving into the Vietnamese coast just on the visible imagery before it went nightfall, and infrared imagery there. You can see it just making landfall over Vietnam, and obviously the cloud cover is staying towards the southwest of that storm, so Vietnam and Laos as well will probably see the most of the rainfall there in terms of that storm. The infrared and visible imagery on the Eastern Pacific shows the two systems at the moment. Invest 95E at the west to the west, moving slightly southwards by the looks of things, and Invest 94, which is now Tropical Depression 3, which is a much bigger system, and that's moving towards the west-northwest at the moment. The model runs then, the CMC model first of all. You can see the storm developing pretty much as it's forecasted by the National Hurricane Centre to deepen, probably as a Category 1 storm, perhaps a little bit stronger, maybe a mid to high-end Cat 1 storm. And the ECMWF fairly similar as well in terms of developing that storm, and it's going to move in a general west-northwesterly direction. As a matter of fact, all the models are in fair agreement as far as I know, and it's quite interesting to note that there might be another storm forming at the tail end of that, at the end of that run. At the very end of that there, you can see another system forming, especially on the GFS model there. You can see it moving towards the Mexican coastline, so that might be one to watch out for in around 4 or 5 days time, but we'll see about that one. The NAV gem as well, I think that moves it slightly closer to the Mexican coastline than the current forecast. It takes it a bit further north at the moment, so that's interesting to see if it does take that little turn towards the north. It could make all the difference to seeing any effects on the Mexican coastline. The GFDM model here shows the Tropical Depression 3E moving towards the west-northwest, and another system behind that there at the very end. You saw perhaps a next tropical storm in the eastern Pacific. Same with the HWRF predicting a little bit of a system perhaps forming at the end. Obviously it's fairly far out, so it'd be very interesting to check back in a day or two to see what comes of that in terms of the models. It might pick it up, it might throw it away. Take a looking at the Predictor season scores then for June the 24th. No change because no tropical storms have formed as of the narration and upload date. Ken remains in first with 105, Typhoon Bopa in second with 97, Hurricane Melissa 20 in third place with 95 points. You can submit your own storm totals at the website force13.com/interactive. It's certainly not too late at this point, but if I were you, I would get your prediction in as soon as possible because the points do go down, the available points do go down as time goes on, because the accuracy and the skill goes down, of course, as the season wears on. So what happened on this day then, June the 24th, 1960, Tropical Storm 1 making landfall near Corpus Christi, Texas, causing 15 fatalities and $3.6 million in damages. That's pictured there. 1979, Tropical Storm Anna dissipating in the Atlantic. 1986, Tropical Storm Celia forming in the eastern Pacific. That one's pictured as well at its peak intensity. And in 1989, Tropical Storm Allison formed in the eastern Pacific as well. In 1991, Carlos peaked as a Category 3 hurricane in the eastern Pacific. In 1992, that was pictured by the way, Carlos. Tropical Storm Blas dissipated in the eastern Pacific. In 2001, Typhoon Chabi made landfall near Fuzhou City, China, resulting in 82 fatalities and $422 million in damages. And in 2004, pictured there, Tropical Storm Ting Ting forming in the western Pacific on this day, June 24th. In 2005, Tropical Storm Beatrice dissipated in the eastern Pacific. In 2008, Typhoon Fengshen made landfall in China before dissipating. In 2009, Hurricane Andres dissipated in the eastern Pacific. In 2010, Celia peaked as a 160 mph Category 5 storm. And in 2011, Tropical Storm Haima dissipated in the western Pacific. Obviously, Celia peaking as a Category 5 storm there in the eastern Pacific. I remember tracking that one myself, as a matter of fact. And don't forget, you can track any storms that form on the Force 13 website. Just go to force13.com/storm tracking. That will take you straight to the storm tracking page, where you're presented with a little table with the overview map to show all that's going on at the moment in fairly easy to read terms. And then you can go more in depth to each basin to see the tracking maps and of course the all the information that you need, and of course warning information as it becomes relevant. Obviously with storms out there, it doesn't appear that there will be any warnings issued in terms of what will be Tropical Storm Cosme in the eastern Pacific, but obviously it'll be interesting to watch to see where that one goes. And of course the next storm after that could pose a threat to Mexico if indeed it does verify according to the GFS, but obviously that's quite far out and a lot of uncertainty on that one at the moment. And don't forget, you can visit the social pages, YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. Just search Force 13 on those and you should find us fairly easily enough. And don't forget to show your support by liking, favoriting, commenting and subscribing, because otherwise I wouldn't know who's watching, and it's nice to see people who are commenting and such, and I appreciate everything that I do receive. Thank you very much for those who have already, and I'll be answering all your questions on the channels as well, if there are any presented. And of course there will be another bulletin coming up. It's around the same time tomorrow, around midnight UTC on Tuesday, June 25th, 2013. And of course, if necessary, there will be another storm update during the day tomorrow for Tropical Depression 3.